Today I'm making a bunch of crowd pleasers, and the highlight of this show is a black bean chili. Now, the black bean chili is actually a vegetarian recipe, but it has this hearty, meaty flavor that everybody loves. And to go with it, I'm making scones. Not usually what you serve with chili, but these scones have big chunks of cheddar cheese and some pickled jalapenos, so the flavors really go nicely. A little salad, and the vinaigrette is made with a reduced orange juice, and that sweetness and the spicy chili is nice. And to follow it all up, a creamy flan. Again, none of these things really classically go together, but it makes a spectacular meal. Now we're gonna start with the flan because it takes the longest to make, and we're gonna start with the caramel. The caramel is that halo on the top of a good flan, adds that almost burnt caramel flavor. And we're gonna make caramel on the stove. And then this pot, I have just a 1/4 cup of water. And to this, we're gonna add 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And I'm gonna add it right to the center of the pot. And that's just because when making caramel, it can be a little fussy, especially if the sugar gets stuck to the side of the pot before it melts. That'll cause the caramel to seize. But by pouring it right into the center, you avoid that. I'm gonna use a spatula and just make sure the sugar all gets wet before we put it on the stove top. All right, that looks good. Onto the stove it goes, medium heat. Now when making caramel, it is not time to walk away from the stove. You wanna stand here and watch it go, because when it goes like that. So for the first 5 minutes or so, I'm not gonna do anything with the pot. I'm not gonna swirl it, not gonna stir it, just gonna let that sugar slowly melt into the water, and it'll start to turn golden. That'll take about 5 minutes. Okay, you can see it starting to turn a little golden on one side of the pan. That usually happens because the burner's not quite even. You just want to swirl and swirl gently, let it continue to cook, let it continue to get nice and golden. Ah, there she goes. You can smell it. You can start to see some wisps of smoke. That means things are going to happen pretty quickly from here on out. Oh, I love that smell. Makes the whole house smell like caramel. All right, there's the color. Heat's off. Just continuing to swirl this, letting the caramel continue to cook with that residual heat. Looking for a dark reddish color. Now I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of warm water. It's gonna bubble. I love that sound. You wanna swirl that water in. That's gonna take that caramel and turn it into a sauce that will stick to the flan. Now this caramel's ripping hot, so be careful. So here I have a loaf pan. This is slightly smaller than a 9x5. I think this is an 8.5 by 4.5, but a 9x5 would work. Into the pan it goes, one foul swoop. Now you don't wanna scrape out any of the caramel stuck on the pan. That caramel stuck behind has a hard consistency. You'll wind up with hard candies. Whatever pours out is great. So I'm gonna set this aside, let it cool a little bit while we make the custard. Here we go. 2 eggs and 3 yolks. To that, we're gonna add 1.5 cups of whole milk. I find it easier to break the yolks up first and then whisk in the liquid. Just gives you a nice, even custard. There we go. All right, to this, we're gonna add a whole can of sweetened condensed milk. Now, the sweetened condensed milk is the key to a great flan. It's already sweetened. It's a stable product, so the custard won't break as it cooks. And you have a nice creamy consistency on the finished flan. There we go. And now for flavor, I'm just gonna add a little bit of lemon zest, about 1/4 teaspoon, thereabouts. And I like it because it's kind of an unexpected flavor, at least for me. There's a lot of coffee flans, I've seen coconut flans, almond-based flans, but that little bit of acidity from the lemon zest is a real winner in my opinion. All right, I'm gonna whisk this all together. That sweetened condensed milk is pretty thick on the bottom there. So you want to make sure it's nicely incorporated with the rest of the ingredients. Very nice. Into the pan it goes, right on top of that caramel, which you can see is really nicely set up. All right, custard into the pan. And the cool thing about this flan is that we're gonna cook it in the slow cooker because the oven's gonna be very busy throughout the day with the chili and the scones. And the slow cooker is a slow, even heat, so you get a perfectly cooked flan. So taking this back to the slow cooker, and we're gonna use the slow cooker like a water bath, as you would if you cooked this in the oven. So I'm gonna put some water into the bottom of the slow cooker. You want it to measure about 1/2 inch, which depending on your slow cooker is about 2 cups. And you really do need an oval slow cooker for this so that the loaf pan can fit nicely inside. So in goes the flan. There we go, lid goes on. Now this takes about 2 to 3 hours on low, depends on your slow cooker. There we go. You get a good look at that. My slow cooker actually says 4 hours when it only takes 2 to 3 to cook this on low. That's because that's a nice old slow cooker, and it doesn't do anything under 4 hours on low. So I'm gonna set a timer. I make this enough that I know that in that slow cooker, it takes 3 hours, but you know it's done with the center of the custard registers about 180 degrees. So while that flan is cooking away in the slow cooker, it's time to make the scones. And let me tell you, these scones bring the house down every time. And actually, I think scone is kind of an interesting term for this baked good. It's more like a biscuit, especially with the chunks of cheese. But we're gonna cut them in a scone-like shape, so we'll call them scones. And we're gonna make the dough in the food processor. Just makes it super easy. So in here, I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour. To that, I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar, 1/4 cup of sugar, a little bit of baking powder, just a tablespoon. Actually, a tablespoon is not a little bit. That's quite a bit for something like this. But the scones are a little bit on the heavy side with the cheese and the jalapeno, so they need a good amount of lift. Some salt. You want 1.25 teaspoons of table salt. All right. And now for the butter and the cheese, which I've kept chilled in the refrigerator. All right, that's the good stuff. It's 12 tablespoons of butter. I'm gonna add half of it to the food processor now. It was cut down into 1/2-inch chunks. And again, I kept it nice and chilled in the refrigerator just until we needed it. Now I'm gonna let this processor rip for about 15 seconds. It's gonna break down that butter and it's gonna look like a uniform consistency, almost like cornmeal. All right, you can see that butter is worked in almost completely and it's changed the consistency of the flour so it looks like cornmeal. Now we're gonna add the rest of the butter, the remaining 6 tablespoons, and we're gonna add the cheddar. This is 6 ounces of sharp cheddar, again cut into 1/2-inch cubes. Now we're gonna pulse this in, about 10 pulses. And you want the size of the pieces of butter and cheese to be about the size of a pea, but no larger. So again, about 10, 12 pulses. All right, let's take a good look here. Looking for the biggest pieces I can feel, but being mindful of that blade down there in the bottom. You can see there's a piece of butter, there's a piece of cheese. That's about as large as you want any of the pieces to be, so this is perfect. Now we're gonna dump this mixture into a nice big bowl. Now time to add the pickled jalapenos. We're gonna add about 1/2 cup or so. You wanna take them out of their juice, give them a coarse chop. Yeah, that's about 1/2 cup, maybe a little extra. This is my favorite part of these scones. Run my knife through it. You don't want any big pieces, but you want them to be discernible in the final scone. That's perfect. Now I'm just gonna toss these in with the flour. You just wanna make them nice and coated with flour. Make sure they're evenly distributed throughout the bowl. This might get a little messy, but that's okay because the dough's on the wet side, but that makes sure the scone is nice and moist. That looks pretty good. Now I'm just making a little well in the center of the flour. That's where the liquids are gonna go. And here are the liquids. We have 1 cup of whole milk and 1 egg and 1 yolk. We're gonna whisk these together. Make sure those egg yolks are nicely broken up. All right, that looks good. Okay, liquids into the dry. Gonna put it right in the well. And then using a spatula, just gonna slowly tap the dry ingredients into the liquid. A few lumps are okay, but this method really helps prevent getting any big lumps. You wanna make sure all the flour is incorporated, that there's no loose floury bits. My mouth is already watering thinking about these. All right, so we're gonna turn this dough out onto a lightly floured counter. So here I have some bench flour, and I'm gonna turn the dough out, nice and sticky. Oh yeah. You just wanna knead the dough 2 or 3 times, make sure it's nice and cohesive. All right, that's it. Now we're gonna pat this out into a rectangle that measures about 15 inches long and 3 inches wide. Bench scraper is a really good tool for this. I actually flour the bench scraper and I use it to help me make nice straight sides. So 3 inches across, 15 inches long. All right, let's see how we're doing. About 3. Okay, needs to be just a bit narrower and a bit longer. That looks pretty good. Now we're gonna cut it into scone shape. And so I'm gonna divide this dough in half. We're gonna make 12 scones. So that's, make 6 out of this half and 6 out of this half. So divide the dough. Then we're gonna cut each one in half. More flour on this bench scraper. There we go. All right, and that's it. Wash my hands while I get the rim baking sheet for these. All right, clean hands, nice clean baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Now I'm gonna put these right onto the parchment paper. You wanna spread them out, about an inch or so between the scones. They're gonna grow as they bake. You wanna give them nice ample room to get big and fluffy. All right, so these have to sit in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. Let them firm up a bit before you put them in the oven. But you can also refrigerate them for up to 24 hours in advance, which is great if you're having a party, and I highly recommend you make these for a party. They are such a hit. So quick covering with plastic wrap, and off to the fridge they go.
Are you ready to take your cooking to the next level?
Introducing the complete America's Test Kitchen TV show cookbook.
Featuring every recipe from every episode of America's Test Kitchen. That's thousands of recipes. That texture is unbelievable. Reviews
Gadgets you didn't know you needed.
and tips.
Yes, there's some terrible choices, but there are also some amazing choices.
We've spilled all of our secrets and included our insider notes alongside each recipe.
Plus, there's a handy shopping guide, so you know exactly what to grab when you're at the store.
And of course, it makes an excellent gift. Get your copy today at americastestkitchen.com.
All right, it's time to get these scones into the oven and start making the chili. Here's the chilled scones into a 425-degree oven. They take about 15 minutes to bake through. All right, I'm gonna spin them halfway through. Actually, they're not gonna be fully done after 15 minutes. We have a little trick we're gonna add at the end. So 15 minutes, then I'll show you the trick. All right, in the meantime, on to the chili. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is a vegetarian chili, but we're gonna build in a really deep flavor profile, starting with mushrooms. This is a pound of white mushrooms. We're gonna pulse them in the food processor, help grind them down. They'll melt into the chili, but they add an unbelievable heft and depth of flavor. So I washed and trimmed these already. I'm just gonna break them into pieces as I add them to the food processor. And the stems are included. I like breaking the stems apart, but I did trim the bottoms. All right, now lid on. I'm gonna process these about 10 times. You just want these coarsely chopped. All right, there we go. All right. That's great. Gonna leave these in the food processor. Let's move over to the cooking pot. Here I have a nice big Dutch oven, and we're gonna start off with some spices, and not even chili powder necessarily. We're gonna start off with some mustard seeds, and add a tablespoon of mustard seeds right to the pot. We're gonna add some cumin seeds, 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds. All right, time to head to the stove. We're gonna toast these spices over medium heat. That just takes about a minute. You can tell they're toasted because you'll smell it. I can start to smell those mustard seeds and that cumin. Now I'm gonna add some vegetable oil, about 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Now we're gonna add a chopped onion and those processed mushrooms. All right, I'm gonna stir it all in, make sure everything is evenly combined. And then the trick here is to actually cover the pot and let this cook covered for about 5 minutes. Let the mushrooms and onions release their liquid, and then we can start reducing down the flavors. Oh, it's been 5 minutes. You can see all that liquid has come out of the mushrooms and the onions, which is perfect because now we can reduce that liquid and start to build a nice hearty flavor for the stew. So we're gonna let these brown uncovered. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes. The recipe says until the mixture gets brown. I've actually found that what happens is the bottom of the pot gets browned, and that fond is the flavor you're looking for. All right, while that's happening, let's take a look at the scones that have been in the oven. Oh. Yeah. I know, they're not even gorgeous yet. You can see the cheese is starting to ooze out, and that oozy cheese is really good. But they're not done. So that little bit of a trick I was telling you about, so we're gonna finish these with a little bit of honey butter and pop them back in the oven for the last 5 minutes. So here I have 3 tablespoons unsalted melted butter. I'm gonna add about 1.5 tablespoons of honey to that. All right, so the honey not only adds a nice sweet flavor, but it's gonna help these scones finish browning so they come out just looking drop dead gorgeous. And I have to say, it's this honey butter that makes these irresistible. Back in the oven they go, same oven temperature, about 5 minutes to finish baking. All right, now while we're here, let's check on that browning on the bottom of the pot. The color of the mushrooms and the onions has gotten a lot darker, and we're just gonna scrape up the fond that's been forming on the bottom of this pot. All right, that's looking good. Have a little bit of time to prep the last few ingredients for the chili. Now this is chipotle. These are canned chipotles. And a chipotle is just a smoked jalapeno that's then soaked in an adobo sauce. So I have 1 chipotle here. You want about 1 tablespoon of this. More if you like it spicy, less if you don't like it too spicy. All right, so here's my chipotle and adobo, about 1 tablespoon. That looks like a little more than 1 tablespoon, so this batch might be on the spicy side. And some garlic. I'm gonna press the garlic right into the pot. I'm using all the chipotle today. It's gonna be a spicy batch. Right into the pot. And here I have the 9 cloves of garlic. You notice this garlic looks a little translucent. That's because I bought the peeled stuff. And I keep it in the freezer. That just prevents the peeled garlic from getting good and moldy. And then when you pull it out, you let it thaw. It's perfect for an application like this. But when it thaws, it has a little bit of that translucent color. I can smell the garlic and the chipotle. Now time for the chili powder. You want 3 tablespoons of chili powder. You just want to cook that again, another 30 seconds to a minute till you can smell it. Oh, that's good. Now time for the liquids. We're gonna add 2.5 cups of water and 2.5 cups of vegetable broth. Again, keeping this vegetarian. We're gonna add 2 bay leaves, a little bit of brown sugar, just 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And this is another secret ingredient that's great when you're making black bean chili. It's baking soda. Now the baking soda helps the chili have that nice dark color. If you don't add it, you'll notice that your black bean chili turns out a little gray. So just a little goes a long way, just 1/8 teaspoon of baking soda. All right, now the star of the show, the black beans. This is 1 pound of dried black beans. Now we're gonna add them right to the Dutch oven. Now we're gonna bring this to the simmer. We're actually gonna cook it in the oven, but right now the scones are in there, so we're gonna do a little swapperoo. The scones should be done. Oh, look at that. That is just magic. I know the honey on top of the scones, it does so much for browning. All right, so I'm gonna reduce the oven temperature to 325. I'm also gonna lower the oven rack in the oven. Perfect. All right. Lower middle rack, that just means that the pot will be in the middle of the oven, which is where you want it for even cooking. Okay, cover the pot, pot goes in the oven. We're gonna cook this for about 1 hour, then we're gonna add the remaining ingredients. Okay, chili's in, now let's turn back to these scones. Oh yeah, wanna get them off this pan, right onto a nice wire rack. All right, we're gonna let these cool while that chili cooks for about 1 hour. Oh, I can smell it. Oh, now it's not done yet, but you can see the black beans have started to cook down. Now it's time to add some bell peppers. This is 2 bell peppers cut into 1/2-inch pieces. If you added them at the beginning, they would just disintegrate by the time the chili was done cooking. So that's why we're adding them partway through. Also gonna add a big old can, a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. All right, we're gonna stir this into the chili. We're gonna put the lid back on. It's gonna go back in the oven for another hour until the beans are good and tender. All right, that flan has been in the slow cooker for a while. Let's take its temperature. All right, looking for a temperature of 180 degrees, right in the center. Oh, there we have it, 179, 180, 181. Perfect. Gonna take the flan out of the water bath. Onto the wire rack it goes. You can see when I shake it, it's nicely set around the outside, but it's a little jiggly in the middle, and that is perfect. It will continue to cook and set up as it cools on the counter for 2 hours. And then, of course, you have to chill it in the fridge at least 8 hours to get it nice and cold, but you can do it up to 24 hours in advance.
Love what you're watching? Take your cooking to the next level with our Essential membership. Get instant access to thousands of recipes, tips, techniques, product reviews, and step-by-step videos. Our Members app allows you to search by ingredient, set dietary preferences, and save your favorite recipes. For those looking to level up, our newest feature, ATK Classes, offers more in-depth instruction led by ATK experts, so you can gain greater confidence in the kitchen. Start your free trial by visiting the App Store or going to americastestkitchen.com/YouTube today.
That chili should be done cooking by now. Let's take a good look. Ooh, that was a good slam on the oven door. Sorry, Mr. Oven. Oh, it's so fun to note how the smells change as the chili keeps on cooking. It has a much more complex smell. Oh, you can see those peppers have cooked in. Those tomatoes have become part of the sauce. Just want to taste it, make sure those beans are tender. That's when you know the chili's done. So good every time. All right, the bay leaves are on top. No digging around, let's get those out of there. And in goes a whole bunch of fresh chopped cilantro, about half a cup. Man, that smells good. I'm gonna let this sit over here for a little bit, put the lid back on to keep it warm. All right, we're gonna let that chili sit for a minute while we finish making the salad. And it's just a simple green salad, but it's the orange lime vinaigrette that I just love. And as I mentioned earlier, we made it by reducing orange juice. So I started with 2 cups of fresh orange juice, put it into a pan, let it reduce on the stove and simmer for about 25 minutes or so until it measured 2/3 of a cup. And this becomes the base of the vinaigrette. So to that, I'm gonna add some lime juice. You want about 3 tablespoons of lime juice. You gotta use fresh lime juice. And really, when you're making the reduction, if you use fresh orange juice, either squeeze it yourself or buy the really fresh stuff, it's usually in the produce department, it makes a big difference. All right, so I'm gonna eye the lime juice. Oh yeah, that's 3 tablespoons for sure. All right, we're gonna add a little bit of shallot. This is like half a shallot. We just want about a tablespoon. All right, that looks pretty good. Now we're actually gonna build the vinaigrette in my fancy salad dressing maker, which is also just a jar. So I'm gonna pour the reduced orange juice and all that lime juice right in there. I'm gonna add my shallot. Now we're gonna add a little bit of honey, about a tablespoon of honey. That looks good. About 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Not a lot of olive oil. Don't need it because that juice has a nice thick consistency when it reduces. And a little bit of salt and pepper, about half a teaspoon of each. All right, and the magic of a jar, not only good for storing the vinaigrette, but it's great for shaking. All right, that's it for the vinaigrette. On to the salad, which is the last piece of this meal that we're gonna put together. I'm gonna put a little apple in the salad. I love the crunch, I love the sweetness. So here, just 1 apple. All right, so I'm gonna cut the apple into matchsticks. What you wanna do is make nice thin slices of apple. Leave them stacked, and then you can make nice matchsticks or rustic matchsticks. I mean, it's going in a salad. I have the rest of the salad back here in this nice, big, gorgeous bowl. Now, this is a pretty rustic salad. It's just romaine. Put a little endive in there just to jazz it up a bit. This vinaigrette's pretty hearty, so you don't want to use delicate lettuce leaves. You want things sturdy, like romaine. A little vinaigrette. I'm not going to use all this vinaigrette. And whatever you don't use can store in the fridge for up to 7 days. Put a little vinaigrette on there. Nice big bowl. All right, that looks perfect. All right, let's build a plate. Time to make a nice looking bowl of chili. Oh, look at this. It has the perfect consistency. Now this chili holds like a dream once it's cooked, but you might have to loosen it up with a little extra water or even vegetable broth, because it has a tendency to thicken as it sits. Now all chili toppings are welcome here. I'm gonna stick with the standard, a little bit of sour cream. Oh, a little more sour cream. Some tomatoes. Nice fresh color and a nice burst of acidity. Some scallions and a lime wedge. I'm gonna squeeze this lime right over the top. Oh yeah, little salad. And last but definitely not least, one of these gorgeous scones. So this meal is great if you're having a bunch of people over for a casual meal, but also the leftovers are fantastic. I mean, this chili freezes like a dream. The scones, as I mentioned, taste great the next day if you pop them into a toaster oven. All right, going into the chili. The beans are perfectly cooked through, but not mushy, and there's layers of flavor. A little bit of heat. I added a little extra heat, as you know, so I like it a little on the spicy side. Man, that's good. And these scones, I can't wait for you to try these. I mean, it's the kind of thing you take one bite, you're like, oh, that's good, and then it hits you. You taste the sweetness of the scone, and then you taste a little of the cheese, and then you get the jalapeno and the honey, and you can see the texture of it. It's like a really good tender biscuit. Oh, man, it is so good with this chili. A little of the salad. The sweetness of the salad with that orange juice vinaigrette is a perfect balance for these other spicy flavors. Oh, this is a terrific meal. And to think we have that rich, silky flan coming up for dessert. All right, time to dig into this flan. It has been chilling in the refrigerator, so it's nice and cold. Now I'm just gonna take a paring knife, run it around the edges of the pan. That'll help it loosen from the pan nice and easily. Now, revealing a flan is always the fun part because that caramel sauce drips down the edges. And it's a little nerve-wracking for the cook. So you do a flip onto a nice large platter. Knock it. Oh, you see that caramel coming out. Ho. All of this caramel in this pan. Oh yeah, some of it will stick to the pan. Some of it can just get poured right out. The more caramel, the better. All right, set this aside. Now for a slice. I have to say that is a perfect looking flan. And to think we did it in the slow cooker, so it's all hands off. The other cool thing about the slow cooker, it's nearly impossible to overcook it because it's just stuck on that low setting. All right, so flan slices are up to the cook. The depth, I'm gonna go about there. I know it's a little on the big side, so sue me. Oh, look at that texture. It is just perfectly creamy and smooth throughout the whole thing. So cool and silky. Little bit of sweetness, not too much. Oh, the only sugar was from that can of sweetened condensed milk, but it's that top, that caramel top and the lemon zest that just brightens everything up at the end. This is how you finish a meal. See you next time.
If you're ready to take your cooking to the next level, head over to americastestkitchen.com and get a free trial of our ATK Essential membership. While you're there, you can sign up for our free email newsletters and download our app. So, what are you waiting for?